Today on Fox and Friends, White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway tried to put the kibosh on all that talk. Watch.
The Democrats don't seem to begin or end a sentence these days without having the word crisis in it. So it's not a constitutional crisis. This president and his team have been very compliant with the Mueller investigation. I think over 1 million pieces of paper have been produced. Over 33 or so individuals have either produced documents or testified or both, or met or both.
The president also has one ace in the hole, the clock. Democrats are clamoring for investigations, but they're not in power for another 2 months, January 3rd to be exact. So between now and then, the president has quite a bit of leeway to use his executive power as he sees fit. But he doesn't hold all the cards. There's word the Mueller team is now writing their final report on the Russia investigation, perhaps looking to head Trump off at the pass, just like a good old Western. In other words, the next few days and months are about to get a whole lot more interesting, if that's possible. Right now, we've got former CIA analyst and radio show host Buck Sexton in the house to make sense of everything in the world. Buck, welcome back.
Thank you, Kennedy. Good to see you.
So let's talk first about the fear and hysteria over Sessions firing. It's not a surprise. The president has been telegraphing for many, many months that he was going to do just this. He even said it would probably happen after the midterms. It happened the day after the midterms. So what do you make of the reaction to Sessions' resignation?
The president told me in the Oval Office a couple of months ago, I don't have an attorney general. So there is zero surprise here that after the midterms, the president decided to switch things up. And I think that everyone needs to just take a step back and look at what's really going on here. A constitutional crisis is not whatever a bunch of libs don't like. There's actually no problem with the authority the president has used here to replace his attorney general, who serves at his pleasure. The fact that you had an attorney general who had recused himself from anything to do with Russia collusion, the Mueller probe, the special counsel, and that person has been replaced is not actually unethical in any way, shape, or form. The president can get rid of the attorney general. He did get rid of the attorney general. And I think it's really interesting that people are claiming that Whitaker should recuse himself.
Yeah, what is the basis for that? Is it because he has written in op-ed pieces how he foresees the Mueller investigation coming to an end and what he considers to be various red lines in the Mueller investigation, and he's had strong opinions? Are opinions a good basis for that kind of recusal?
I mean, there's so much laughable hypocrisy coming from particularly where I am down here in the swamp on this one, from the media and from Democrats. Kennedy, first of all, you'll remember a couple of months back when you had some FBI agents who had text messages saying horrific things about the president, and we were told, whoa, hold on a second. People are allowed to have their opinions. Those happen to be senior FBI agents, in one case a senior FBI agent who was overseeing an investigation that went directly to the president of the United States. So now we're being told this guy, Whitaker, is not allowed to essentially have stated anything about the Mueller probe, or else he's supposed to recuse himself. He said that there should be parameters. Is there really a debate about that? Yeah, there should be parameters. This should not be an open-ended fishing expedition. That there's so much criticism of him for that reason, saying that there should be limitations on the special counsel, just goes to show you that people want it to be a fishing expedition, the people that are so opposed to this. And the bigger issue...
Yes, that's what they want. They want government power to be used against those in power they disagree with. But I want to ask a little bit about Rod Rosenstein, because even though he is kind of an unpopular figure in many circles, and he has several noted conflicts of interest, and that's not conspiracy theory, there are not dots that need to be connected. That's plain fact. And there are people who are upset that Rosenstein was not appointed interim attorney general. What do you make of that?
Rosenstein has a much more clear conflict of interest, as well as a direct involvement in some of the issues that are under investigation in the special counsel. Rosenstein, the firing of James Comey, you can't separate these things. I mean, Rosenstein is actually somebody who should have recused himself many, many months ago based on any kind of standard of conflict of interest. And I think that what you see is that people are just applying the standard for what they want, and then all of a sudden the standard goes away when they don't. Rosenstein would not have been a good pick for this. And also, are we to think that Whitaker is unethical just because he thinks that there should be some limitations to the special counsel?
I don't know. I mean, a little later in the show, we're going to talk about who might succeed Jeff Sessions. It doesn't seem like this is the guy who is going to be confirmed as the official attorney general. He's the chief of staff, and I'm still curious, do you know who appointed him chief of staff? Was it Sessions or was it the president?
So, I believe, although don't quote me on this, I believe that Jeff Sessions brought him in.
I mean, that
this.
makes sense. When you're the attorney general, it seems as though you would be able to appoint your own chief of staff.
Yes. Yeah, it's not something that requires any kind of congressional authorization.
That's the issue that Judge Napolitano raised with Whitaker's interim appointment, is that he does not have that sort of congressional stamp necessary to lord over the bastion of justice.
But this is the process. The process is you appoint an interim attorney general. You have somebody who becomes the interim attorney general, and then you have somebody else who has to go through advice and consent of the Senate. So everything here is well within constitutional bounds. Everything the president's doing is within his authority. There's no lack of ethics at work here. It's just people like the idea of Rosenstein, because let's be honest, a lot of liberals believe that Rosenstein is at least somewhat anti-Trump, and so they want somebody
Therefore, he must be good.
Therefore, he must be good. But other people who don't come out as overtly anti-Trump, like Whitaker, they can't be considered ethical. And it just goes to show you, when it looks really bad for people that liberals like within the DOJ or the FBI, it's everyone's allowed to have political opinions. Let's not take this too far.
Yeah.
And then
there's no reciprocity. There's no reciprocity
rule. At all.
It's pretty insane, and I continue to demand that because I like to party. Buck Sexton, thank you very much.
I like to party too. That's why
right.
we get along so well on the show.
That's why we're here, 9 o'clock Eastern. Love it.
Joining me right now by phone, former Arkansas governor and Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee. Governor, good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Trish. Yeah, Tom Perez is showing what a lot of Democrats are. The ultimate double standard. Same thing they did with James Comey. They couldn't believe that James Comey was keeping his job until Donald Trump fired him, and then he became the greatest thing they'd ever known. And with the same thing with Sessions. The senators all voted against him. All the Democrats said he's not fit for the job. He's a racist. They gave all these ridiculous reasons. Jeff Sessions is a good, decent man, and he's been a friend a long time. But he clearly was at odds with the president in this job, and the president has the right to put people in positions that he has confidence in. People in those jobs serve at the pleasure of the president. It's just that simple.
So doesn't Tom Perez weaken his argument when he starts making these comparisons, say, if you would, to Watergate, saying that somehow the firing of Sessions is worse than Watergate? Once again, I fear, Governor, that these pundits and these politicians out there have a distorted sense of history. And I say that as a U.S. history major. I look at how they apply current day situations to history, and often it makes absolutely positively no sense and is downright despicable and a slap in the face to those that have suffered. And it comes to mind MSNBC and Joe Scarborough on some of his comments, shall we say, comparing the president to Adolf Hitler. But this is what they're doing. This revisionist version of history. Does this show you really how desperate they are? How worried are they that this Mueller thing is going to go away because there was no there to begin with?
Well, I think it shows us how desperate they are. It shows us how hyperbolic they are. It also shows how little history their audiences seem to have. I wonder, did anyone sitting in their audience, did they pass history? Did they pass civics? Just how little do they know in order to continue to say this? And
unfortunately,
to say this
they know just enough to make positively no sense, right? Just enough.
Watergate, Trish, is like saying that there was a mud puddle outside my home. It's worse than the flood of Noah's day. That's how ridiculous some of these arguments are, and it makes no sense.
Irresponsible. You know, Governor, speaking of this irresponsibility, if you would, there's really, I think, an increasing lack of civility out there these days. I mean, we're seeing it whether it be from reporters at the White House who don't seem to think that there's any need for any kind of decorum or any kind of etiquette, even though they're there at the White House. We're seeing it in the streets with Antifa protests. Many journalists, including one of our colleagues, have been targeted. I mean, and I know, sir, that this hits very close to you, to home for you, because your own daughter has experienced this, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. How do we wind up here, sir?
Well, it's very frustrating to me when people pretend that they're professional journalists, and they're not. They're advocates. And what happened yesterday at the White House was a disgusting display of just old-fashioned bullying. And you have a person who thinks he's his reporter, but the fact is he's an advocate. He didn't ask the president a question. He began by saying, I want to challenge you. Well, if he wants to debate the president, then he has an opportunity. He can get his name on the ballot in 2020. He can run for president, and then he gets to debate the man that he doesn't like. But if he's a reporter, his job is to ask legitimate questions. He may not get the answer that he wants, and when he doesn't, then he has to hand the mic over to one of his colleagues, because I don't know if he's looked around the room, but Trish, he's not the only one in there. I'm sure they all would like to ask a question.
Oh, it was a packed room, and they all had questions, and quite a few of them were answered. But that struck me too, Governor, because, you know, there is a sense of decorum that should come with being a White House correspondent. And one of the things that really bothered me was that young woman was there running the mics. I had one Democratic strategist on the program last night say, well, you know, it's the president's fault. It's the White House's fault for putting her in that position. Governor Huckabee, last I checked, you didn't need a bouncer at a White House press conference.
I hope not, Trish. You know, that's kind of crazy when we get to the place where we no longer believe that the reporters who are there to do a job, get information, share it with the people, and let the people make up their minds.
Well put. Thank you so much. Governor, thanks for joining. Good to see you.
Want to try to intimidate the most effective voices for conservatism out there. And who are most effective? Hannity, Tucker, and myself, and Rush Limbaugh, and all people. They want to try to target all these people, and until they are exposed and prosecuted, they will continue to do this. I have flagged for you on Twitter what they have been allowing on Twitter. This Antifa USA, they have a knife emoji, and they basically say, "We know where you are." That's their tweet, their big tweet, trying to rally people to go against conservatives. Why is Jack Dorsey allowing these accounts? Why? And they're shutting down like Alex Jones. I mean, okay, Alex Jones show up at people's houses? No. Alex Jones might have views that are out there and they're wacky, but does he say show up at their house and terrorize them?
An incitement of violence.
It's an incitement of violence, and they're trying to create a deadly situation. And something deadly will happen unless the Justice Department steps in. So 855-40-LAURA, your reaction to what they did to Tucker and what they're doing across the country at college campuses, smashing buildings, masks on their face. That should never be allowed. Never be allowed.
But this, Laura, this was happening
during Obama.
Inauguration Eve.
Right.
When Donald Trump was having inaugural parties, and there were only two, you'll remember, in D.C., outside the convention center. There were masked people throwing things on women's gowns, wearing the masks, throwing smoke bombs. It was a mess. So this has been going on for a while, and frankly, law enforcement has looked the other way and considered this like a Halloween, group just running around, kind of masking and having fun.
It's not.
It's not.
No, it's not. And who benefits if the American rule of law begins to deteriorate? Who benefits? What outside entities benefit? Think about that. China benefits. Other countries who seek to hurt the United States, they benefit. But if anarchy then is allowed, of this type of anarchic behavior is allowed, my friends, all hell breaks loose in this society. You lose law and order, all hell breaks loose. I'm telling you. In Guatemala and Central America, contrary to what a lot of people think, conservatives actually who go there understand how those countries work. Friends of mine in El Salvador and Guatemala, who I've known for 33 years, you know how they have to live? Security in their trees. Right. They have security in their trees alongside their hillside. Remember, Raymond? We met one of them.
Yeah.
Remember? We had
this
dinner
is
there.
the entirety of South and Central America. If you're even
money,
upper middle class,
you have to have your own
need personal security.
For kidnapping, you have to have someone in the back of your car all the time armed.
And if you're a CEO or a very successful individual, you have to have security around your perimeter.
Yep.
That's not how we should live in America.
No.
But it is. Bill O'Reilly said just the other day to Sean Hannity on radio, I had to get the security, not only have them outside my house, I had to have them inside my house. Now, why anybody should have to live like that really is ridiculous. Because of something you're just speaking reporting on air.
Mike in Montana. I'm going to go to Mike on line 5. Now, Mike, if you're in a neighborhood in Montana and you're not, way out in the boondocks, but you're in a neighborhood, someone shows up at your neighbor's door, banging, shouting, "We know where you live." Where are these neighbors? I keep saying, where are the neighbors? The old days, the neighbors would say, "Well, tackle these guys, tackle them and hold them down," or worse, but tackle them and hold them down until the police get there. In Washington, everyone's hiding behind, watching their DVRs and like, "Oh yes, my Wi-Fi's still working. Oh yeah, okay, call the police." No. You go out there and you tackle these little pencil neck geeks. Little geeky, little mommy daddy trust fund people, their masks. I'd rip their masks right off their faces. Take a photo of them, put that up on the internet. No, try this stuff. I'm telling you something. This people got to look out for other people. Look out for your neighbor. Mike.
Well, Laura, in our neighborhood, with 4 neighbors around me, we're well armed, so there wouldn't be too much of an issue. We would get out and look out for each other. I mean, it would be over. It would be game over pretty quick, which is why they don't come up here.
Meet Mr. Smith and Mr. Wesson. Yeah, well, it's a criminal organization. This is a criminal organization. Jack in Texas, line 3. Jack.
Hello.
Jack, go ahead. Are you awake? You sound sleepy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm listening to Laura. I love her show. She's very smart.
I'm actually Laura. Jack, we'll check back with you. Okay, give my best to everybody there. We'll check back with you. Oh my gosh, 855-40 Laura. Oh, who did he think? You think I was?
Dr. Laura.
Dr.
He was
Laura.
calling in to talk to Dr. Laura to say how much he loves Laura Ingram's show. I do that sometimes. I call Dr. Laura just for help. Dr. Laura, she is giving me a hard time again. Won't let me do my yoga stretches on the floor of the studio. She hates my shawl collars. These are the conversations I have with Dr. Laura, not you, Laura.
855-40 Laura. This is the crazy town. This is a crazy town. All right, neighbors look after other neighbors. This was Tucker Carlson. He said, I called my wife, and she was getting ready to go to dinner with me. She heard pounding on the front door, screaming. Someone started throwing himself against the front door and actually cracked our front door. That's where it was. Don't go away.
Who? Kellyanne's husband wrote that. You mean Mr. Kellyanne Conway? He wrote that you were unconstitutionally appointing him. He's wrong. He's just trying to get publicity for himself. Why don't you do this? Why don't you ask Kellyanne that question? All right. She might know him better than me. I really don't know the guy.
Oh boy, Kellyanne and George. That must be getting rough at home over the dinner conversation. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Hey, it's Adam Carolla.
Hey, this is Kelty Knight from Lady Gang.
Hey, it's Steve Austin from The Steve Austin Show.
This is Heather Dubrow from Heather Dubrow's World.
Hey, this is Rob Riggle.
And Sarah Tiana from Wriggles Picks.
This is Caitlin Bristow from Off the Vine on Podcast One.
This Veterans Day, I'd like to give a special thanks to all those who've served in the armed forces.
From the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and the Reserves.
Because of your bravery, we can live without fear.
Because of your valor, we can soar into the bright future.
Because of your sacrifice, we don't have to sacrifice the liberties that we hold so dear.
We could not do it without you.
Thank you again for your service, and all of us at Podcast One.